Catalina to my left, Craig Smoke to my right, but it was a day that was one of the most remarkable days, and you hear that recency bias. That thing Saturday night, that Farrell Center was absolutely lit up.
Yeah, it was a great game. I enjoyed it a great deal, much to my own personal detriment, but I did enjoy the game. I brought 2 Kansas fans into the game, and I believe that that's the rule. If you bring road fans in, they have to go away unhappy, and both of them did, with my girlfriend and her brother. But it was a great game. It was a great college basketball Saturday. Really interesting to see some really good top 10 mashups. All, most of them go the upset route. Very interesting. Baylor has developed over the last couple of weeks some real grit, which they didn't have to have before, because you don't really. Not that they didn't have it, they just didn't need to use it, because when you're beating everybody by 8, 10, 12, 14 points, you don't need to really get gritty and tough, because you're just rolling over them. So they showed me a lot on Saturday. It looks like they kind of found what their new offense is going to be in the wake of the injuries that they've had, and looked really, really good against Kansas. It
was a coming out party for Jeremy Sohan, Craig Smoke, and the young 18-year-old, he and Kendall Brown, along with others. Unbelievable for Flo Thamba, Matthew Meyer on the boards, but Jeremy Sohan, he is now on the national map.
Yeah, I think for basketball diehards, he probably was already in terms of just, following him coming out as a recruit, and the fact that basketball players don't stick around in college as long. They kind of get on that radar a bit earlier. So I think, hardcore hoops heads probably knew Jeremy Sohan's talent level. And then, people who have followed the college game or follow Baylor closely know that Scott Drew was very high on the type of talent that he was bringing in. But, yeah, we've seen flashes, but on Saturday we got, the party. We got, the celebration and here we go. Here's Jeremy Sohan, and here's what he's capable of, and here's what he can do, and here's how he can impact things. And he certainly did. That was a team-wide effort, though, on Saturday. He was obviously sensational, but Flo Thamba was great, as you mentioned. Matthew Meyer made some plays, and the rest of the roster did as well. I thought the coaches did a great job, and, the fans get the MVP award. Sohan probably gets it on the team, but, in terms of the weekend and what I'm going to remember, I'll remember him. I'll remember, just the game itself, and most of all, I remember the atmosphere and just, the fact that they had game day, and then the long wait until the actual game itself with the women there in the middle. And, by Saturday night, it was a party in Waco. And then to get down like they did, fears of a repeat of the first meeting, and, oh, gosh, here we go. All this hype and pomp and circumstance, and then they're going to go and lay an egg, and, Kansas is just going to beat them up for the second time. And that wasn't the case. They fought back, valiant effort to fight back, and, having that crowd behind them, I think that made a big difference in them and be able to, push themselves over the top and grab that win. So, yeah, just a massive W for Scott Drew and company. It's not the end of the road by any means, but it was a win that they really could have used, and they could use it, and they got it, and congrats to them. It was a big-time W.
Right now they're number 3 in the country. Kansas didn't drop, I think, one notch. Because of so many losses in the top 10, Gonzaga 1, Arizona 2. We could argue about that all you want. I'm going to have a note from Jerry Palm. His bracketology changed a little bit, waiting on Joe Lunardi. And then again, some of you don't listen to them and don't appreciate their information anyway, but that's fine, because we're now about to hit March Madness, because tomorrow, March the 1st, as I'm walking out of the Farrell Center, in fact, Lee Buttercup on YouTube just put this up on 365 Sports. He said, someone said the good news for Baylor. Well, I'm going to complete what he said. I'm walking out of the arena. Bill Peterson, a part of the Baylor staff, I believe it was, said to me, he goes, the good news for Baylor is that Jeremy Sohan played like a grown man. The bad news is that he did that in front of 22 NBA scouts. And that kind of summarized it. And he was spectacular. And it took a lot. And you heard in what Billis or Greenberg or others, and others that will have, Pat Nunley will join us at 3:30. They made Jeremy Sohan Kansas's nightmare that night, because there's not enough height inside and size inside, because that's all Flo, and Jonathan John Machacha was out. So what do? You take one of your negatives and turn it into a positive. And a guy like Sohan, who can play 6'3" or 6'8", they couldn't do anything about it, because he created mismatches on Kansas' defensive end.
Yeah, I mean, there were things that Kansas did well all night long, offensive rebounding and things that really kept them in the game. Kansas is still, I mean, they're really, really good. They did make shots at the end. Baylor's defense started to come back out again, and a lot of that was forcing them into bad shot selection. And then Baylor started getting the rolls for the first time. And last 10 minutes of the game, Baylor made 12 baskets to Kansas's 2. And I think they were both by one was by Ochai Agbaji and one was by Christian Brown.
He's such a good player.
The rest were all free throws. And Baylor, took advantage of their opportunities when they had them and showed, what they can do. I think both these teams can be poised to go very far. And I think what we saw this weekend is what you're going to see in March, in that you've got anybody can kind of lose. You've got 12 to 16 teams that can pretty much beat anybody on any given night, and so we could have real chaos in March. And heck, I'm looking forward to it. Could be great. Then, for example, the number 3 team in the country now or 4 team is Duke, who got 11 first place votes. Duke hasn't played anybody. They've had their weakest schedule in maybe the history of Duke basketball, and they can beat anybody, but also I think they could probably get beat by anybody.
Well, I'm going to go to Ken Palm. Jack, when you're ready with that, we'll do that in a minute. Is it ready now? Okay. There's a lot of analytics here. And again, everyone likes whatever maybe fits what you like or the teams that you like, but this is through yesterday's games. Ken Palm, the number 1 ranked team, and this is all about offense and defense or whatever. The number 1 Ken Palm team is Gonzaga. Now, yes, they lost to St. Mary's, and we're going to feature St. Mary's with a writer from San Francisco Chronicle today. Kentucky 2, Baylor 3, Arizona 4, Duke, Houston had a nice win, bounced back, avenged their loss to SMU, and did it in style. KU, Auburn, Texas Tech, and they had the tough loss on the road, and shocking because they controlled that game in Fort Worth. They could never separate enough, but they were always up 6-10, and then UCLA at number 10. Now, that's Ken Palm. Also today, I saw where Jerry Palm, CBS Sports, released his bracketology, and his number 1 seeds now are Gonzaga, Auburn, Arizona, and Baylor. And now you have Kansas, Providence, Duke, and Wisconsin, the number 2 seeds. Nova, Villanova, Purdue, Texas Tech, and Kentucky, a 3 seed. So you can lose a game. College basketball is different than college football, unless you're Alabama or Georgia. I say that very sarcastically, maybe. But in college basketball, Gonzaga lost. They could still be number 1. It's the overall resume, and it should be like that in football, but it sometimes is not. They wait for teams to lose, and you're gone down 8. Alabama, UConn, Tennessee, Illinois as a 4 seed. Now, they have Texas as a 6 seed. That's who Baylor plays tonight. And I've seen them as high as a 4 seed. So that's kind of interesting. Houston at number 6 in Ken Palm. You could take that down, Armstrong, if you want. Houston, I didn't know this. They don't have any quad 1 wins. And that's nuts. They did lose, remember, who's one of the teams that beat them? Alabama, I think, might have beaten them. Someone that has had some nice big wins, and one of them might have been against Houston. But Houston is really good, and they're pounding people, and sometimes Ken Palm, and a lot of it could be the analytics of all the others. Strength of schedule should be a part of it. It is, but also even margin of victory. Well, if you're playing a bunch of quad 1 wins teams, you're probably not going to get that much.
Yeah. Houston's losses, by the way, are to Wisconsin, Alabama, SMU, and Memphis.
Okay, well, and Memphis has been up and down on the roller coaster. I wish I would have had time to feed this. Jeff Borzello, ESPN, top 5 are Gonzaga, Baylor, Arizona, Kansas, and Duke. Here's something I want for Texas Tech fans, and I know you're disappointed because you've been on this run, and you lost, and TCU's a gritty team. I mean, they really are, and you had that game absolutely in hand. Baylor is right now the most quad 1 wins with 11. They're 4-3 against the top 12 quad 1 teams. They still have Texas tonight and, of course, Iowa State this weekend. Kansas has 10 wins. Iowa State has 9 quad 1 wins. They're 2-5 against the top 12, and they have a top 12 quad, and they have Baylor Saturday. Texas Tech is 7 quad 1 wins, but guess what? Every single one of those wins, twice against Baylor, twice against Texas, once against Kansas, once against Iowa State, and also they beat Tennessee. So their quad 1 wins are exceptional. at 7-2. The losses are to Kansas, and also the one loss as well to to Iowa State as far as the top teams in Quad 1.
Yeah, the Big 12. I hope that a couple of years ago there was I think it was the year that Tech made it to the Final Four, or maybe the year before, where they had a really great year, and you thought, man, when they get out of the tournament and start playing teams out of the Big 12, it's going to look great. But they beat the crap out of each other all year long. They got in the tournament, and it was just kind of over for almost everybody. This is a Big 12 that, especially the top three, to me, are really set to make deep runs. I mean, they play well against the big teams, and they're all really deep and talented. In spite of injuries, in Baylor for one, but still really deep and talented.
All right, so we have the women play tonight in aims to win the regular season title. Iowa State and Baylor have a 2-game lead with 2 games left. So one of those teams, whoever wins tonight, will win the regular season title. We know that Baylor has owned that.
It's a share of, though, I believe, right? I know they're up 2, but I don't know. I felt like I was reading that it was a share was what they automatically won tonight because there's still another game remaining.
No, they can, but they'll clinch a share. That's what I'm saying.
A share. They don't win it outright, though.
If Baylor wins, they would have swept Iowa State. And that, again, it's not like in football, whatever, but they would win at least a share, which has been their streak forever, over a decade long, of the regular season title.
Well, I think and I kind of wrote about this a little bit today, I think the big thing for the Baylor men, other than, Sohan's performance or, just the coaching or, whatever positive you want to point to, because, you can point to so many of them from Saturday, and I'm sure we'll uncover each of them throughout the rest of the show, but you're mentioning Texas Tech and them playing a couple years ago. They played for a national title a couple years ago. It was a big deal. It's a big deal that they got there. A big deal for the Big 12 that Texas Tech got there, even though Kansas has had their success. It had been a little while, but they didn't win it. And, here they are again a couple years later. They were good last year as well, and here they are again 2 years later, and they're really, really good. And they could very well win it this year, for all we know. That TCU loss was a bit surprising. That's kind of been them, though, winning the more surprise or losing the more surprising games kind of out of nowhere on occasion, but winning all their big ones. But they didn't get there, and maybe this year's the year they do it. But that was what was so huge about Baylor last year, was they got there and they won it. And no questions asked, it's done. It's not one of those like, well, if we get back this time, they won it. They just flat out won it. And I think that's a massive deal. I think that's just the difference between becoming an elite program, and I think Texas Tech's knocking on that door. But, actually going out and winning that national championship and finishing the deal last year, I just think it gives you not only a totally different value in your basketball program, but it also gives this team a different mindset this year of, we're not last year's team, and we've been through a lot, but then you see a performance like Saturday night, and you go, they could do it again. They could rewind this thing and do it again. And I know a lot of people believe that all year long, but it's just been so up and down in terms of what the storylines have been. So it just kind of felt like, that's the national champ type team that we're all expecting and that we're all accustomed to seeing and that we're all used to and that we want to see. That was that on Saturday night.
And they're a great point. And yes, they've also shown where they could get knocked out if they're not careful. The margin of error last year was very large. They were so good. The large margin of error is smaller. We've seen Kansas hammer Baylor in their moment. We've seen Texas Tech have their big moments through their moment against Kansas, Baylor twice, Texas twice. We've seen Kentucky have their moment when they hammered Kansas, and we've seen all the others involved. Auburn, all of a sudden, they're in a little bit of a fade. They're still really good. Arkansas is red hot. Arizona's good. It's going to be, and we put up the interview with Jay Billis last Wednesday or Thursday, and he said, I think any of the top 8 teams in America will win. One of the top 8 teams in America will win the national championship, and some on the board got really kind of almost smart-ass about it, to be honest with you, like, oh, Jay, water's wet, and that was one of the responders. He didn't say that last year. Last year, it was Gonzaga, it was Baylor, and maybe somebody else. This year, it's not the obvious 1 or 2 teams. That's what he was talking about, not trying to be some sort of a, what was Ed McMahon on with Johnny Carson on when he did the
yes man. Hey, Karnak.
Yeah, Karnak the Magnificent. Yeah. He wasn't trying to open up the fact that he can't be wrong if he picks the top 8. But
adding on to the taking advantage of an opportunity, I've seen game day rolling here before and them not win the game, against the big opponent.
Oh yeah.
And And so to have like that double dip on Saturday of the women playing, earlier in the day, game day starting everything off, but even going to Friday night in the lock-in and seeing all the fans and students and everybody out there, seeing the coaches passing out, food and all that. We've seen that before as well, but you just kind of wondered, okay, but how's the game going to go? And so here was this massive opportunity that they've had before, and they've taken advantage of at times. But, I mean, really, just with all the kind of the curiosity surrounding this stretch run and, can they beat Kansas and kind of where is this team, and to have that atmosphere and then to go out and get it done and to do it in the style that they did it and to do it emphatically by the end of it. I just think, again, you get opportunities on occasion. Some get more than others. But whenever you get them, you got to take advantage of them. And if you do it often enough, like Baylor has, winning a national title last year, then you might have some mulligans. But it just kind of felt like they really needed that win on Saturday, and they got it, and I think that was a massive deal. And I think it was massive the women won earlier in the day as well.
No, they did, and beat Kansas, and now they put them in position to if they can sweep Iowa State in Ames, they'll have 10,000 plus there at Hilton Coliseum, if not more, to watch that game tonight. And the first time Baylor slammed Iowa State badly. Now, I want to go through some of the